Hello and good evening, Fáilte. Welcome to Live Irish Myths. Chomani Giariv, Gach Dinna Galir ar Fud Ondawan. Good evening to you, no matter where you are around the world. Welcome to episode Shaska is a 363. Tonight we are returning to last night's topic. We're talking about Orion in Irish mythology. And what an interesting evening we had yesterday. Very different to our normal sort of easygoing scenario. So anyway, the less said about it, the better. I'm glad to see that some of you are here this evening. Anyway, starting with on YouTube, Erica Bao says good afternoon. Almost an hour ago, if you wouldn't be minding. Hello, Erica. Good evening to you. Trononawa. Daisy Peter says, Fáilte, Anthony, and everyone. Here we go to one more exciting episode. I'm glad to be here. And you'd be glad to know that everything's back to normal. Facebook is on the phone and YouTube is on the webcam. So hopefully everything's working fine. Let me know if it isn't. Melissa O'Brien says, hello, Anthony and all. Giaguch, Melissa. Mandy McCurl says, hello, everyone. I think the graphic for tonight's Mythflix is astounding. Thanks, Mandy. Jackie Stevenson says, hello, Anthony and all. Hope yesterday's glitches are fixed. They are, I hope. Daniel Kedney, I'll explain in a moment. Daniel Kedney said, hello there. Banachty. Fáilte, Daniel. Giaguch. Mandy McCurl. Hello, Daisy. I was just bringing the laundry off the line. There you go. These are the things that happen. Archaeoastronomy Database says, this is the stuff. Well, I hope you think so. On Facebook, Barbara Barney, Giaguch, Todd Desper says hello. Fáilte, Jules Cousin says hello. It's working well. Brilliant stuff. Hi, Jules. Dawn Hilton says, hi, guys. Love from Lancashire. And Crawmore, back to you, Dawn. Margaret Ring says, hello, everyone. Lovely to see you, Anthony. Yeah, you don't have the big blank screen this evening. Yes, indeed. Megan Walters says, hi. Terry Lynn Zacharias, good afternoon, Anthony, from Colorado. Brilliant. Paula Snow Queen says hello with a wavy hand. Ralph Waldron, good evening to you. Nice to be able to see you again. Well, I'm not sure. But anyway, yes, indeed. It's nice to be back in action anyway. Nora Gaffney O'Connor, hi, Fáilte. Great to see you, Anthony. Helen Guinan is in house, Your Royal Highness. If you missed Helen, you were on it last night, but I didn't know whether you stayed on. But I discussed, somebody asked, Tracy wanted to know why it was that I bowed to you, and so I explained it a little bit. Nick Casterton says, hello, Anthony, hope you've had a great day. Hi, Tua, hope you're all good. Yes, indeed we are. Brilliant. Alex Casterton says, good evening, Anthony and Tua, looking forward to this tonight. Brilliant. Hello, Anthony, wouldn't miss it, says Barbara Kling, Rowan Grove. Greetings to all. I've had my first 10 days of Duolingo. I will say Giariv. Brilliant stuff. We can see you, he says Saibi. I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but anyway, I can see your comments, which is good. Paula Snow Queen says, hello, Fáilte. Yay, finally. Glad you got it all sorted, Anthony. My grandma always said, as one door closes, another opens. Lovely man, terrible cabinet maker. Tom King says the screen is black. Only kidding. Evening, Anthony. And to once grand day, and once again it's story time on Gawa. Alwyn Roy Badziak, I just wanted to make sure I had it right. Hello, Alwyn. Lovely to talk to you again. Aaron Durrett is watching. Hi, Aaron. Kathy May Deo. Good evening, day, etc. to Mr. Anthony Antua from cold, rainy Newcastle, Washington State, USA. We've had a largely sunny day, bright, little bit of a breeze, and the breeze is cool, so it's still cool. It's still a lot cooler here than it was last week, but we're not complaining because it's not raining. Paddy McCawell says, well, Atua Kade Maratoshiv, greetings from Glasgow, Alva. Hello, Paddy. Good evening. Macy Damon says, good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. That covers it all, doesn't it? Patricia Healy Sullivan, greetings to and Anthony. Windy snow here in Vermont. Ooh, wrap up well. Stay by the fire. Megan Walters. It's doing a weird skipping thing where it repeats itself over and over. Going to have to switch over to the PC. Ooh, that's a bit strange, all right. Hopefully you're the only one that's having that problem. And Her Royal Highness is being addressed by her subjects. Hooray, together again. Loved Anthony and the two, says Aaron. Yes, we're back together. Vicky Wallace, hello. We are listening in the car. Fantastic stuff. Hello, Vicky, and hello, Evan. Trononawa, Yvette Tillema. I can't believe how much I'm learning. Thanks, Anthony. Hi, tribe. Thanks, Yvette. That's nice. A nice sentiment. I hope you're learning something anyway. I'm learning too, which is important. Mariana Dunn. Greetings, Anthony and Tua from sunny Virginia. Fáilte, Mariana. Laura McCormick. Finally, Anthony and Tua from Chile, Killinall and South Tip. Orion being one of my favourite constellations. Looking forward to tonight's discussion. Trinadowa Tua says Maeve Fina Callahan. August Tussa Fain. Mark Ledger. From out of the darkness, there is a flash of brilliance. Good day from Townsville, North Australia. Yes, indeed, Mark. Reminds me of the very last words of Island of the Setting Sun. Actually, your quote. The very, very last sentence. Okay. There is an epilogue. The last sentence in the last chapter. To close off the book. Out of the obscurity of prehistory, a light has emerged. There you go. Freya Sjoholm. Anyway, good morning to you, Mark. Lovely to see you in from Northern Australia. Freya Sjoholm says, Banachdi, Anton Augustua, a pleasure to have you all back around the storytelling fire. Indeed, I hope you all saw the fireside image from the 1950s earlier that I shared. Scott Taggart says, Giaglitch, send your rain our way. We'll pay for shipping. Brilliant. John Roach, I hope you put a shilling in the meter tonight. Yes, definitely. Your Helenness, Aaron says, interesting idea. And the Irish Guards, isn't it? The with the hats, the funny hats. It's great. It's great from here, Anthony, says Dawn. Brilliant, okay. Desiree Riley, hello, lovely Tua. So, happy Anthony got Facebook figured out. We can come back from the dark side of YouTube and comment like normal again. Veronica Casey says, hello all, great to see you. Giaglitch, Veronica. Nancy Wells Brewer says, hello from Orinda, California. Hope you're staying well. All good. Had a dram last night. Had a good sleep. Slept on the whole thing. Got it working anyway and figured out my mistake, which I will explain in a moment very briefly, but I'm embarrassed now. Anyway, never mind. Barbara Kling is talking to Patricia Healy-Sullivan. Paul Blockley says hi from South Wales. Tranonawa, Paul. Nice to see you. How's it gone, Anthony? Says Scott Gracie. It's gone grand, man. It's gone grand, you know. Michael Naylor says, hello, Anthony, and all the tribe. Mike and Jeanette in Princeton in New Jersey. Wonderful to see you both again. Teresa McGuinness says, here again. Fáilte, Teresa. Louise Sherrill says, hi. Giaglitch. Pat Rowan is watching. Fáilte. Mochara Fórig. Conasatatu. On will to egg driving a nucht in you. It's daytime for you. Nolan Proctor says, I love the broadcasts. Keep them coming. Hello, Nolan. Long-time follower of Mythical Ireland. And with an unforgettable name. A nice name. A different name, but a very nice name. Kathy Millett says, in the garden in sunny LaGrange Park, Illinois. Hi, Anthony. Well, fáilte, and good evening to you, Kathy. Demi Woe says, sorry I'm late. Don't worry. We're fine. We've plenty of time. We're only just doing the introductions. No problem. Sandra Lawton says, hello from Alaska. Very good evening to you, Sandy. And it must be early enough in your morning. It's pre-noon there anyway, definitely. Possibly something like 10 a.m., is it? Very good morning to you. Pat Rowan says, the pure starlight is with us, Swan Tua. I like that. Okay, brilliant. I think we're up to date. And I'm very sorry about last night. I will explain momentarily. Flower Child says, hello from Las Vegas on YouTube. I, too, am O'Brien from Las Vegas, Nevada. Well, fáilte, Flower Child O'Brien. I'm gathering you're a female, but maybe I'm wrong. And if I am, please accept my apologies. Erica Rivertree, Banachtheo, Louisville, Kentucky. Cloudy and rainy here, but I love this weather. Perfect for a cuppa, a blanket, and a good book or a Mythflix episode. Brilliant stuff, Erica. Good to see you. River Faye says, hello, everyone. Sunny day here in Western New York. Nice to know the sun is shining. John Main says, hello from a very cold San Francisco. Hello, John. Fáilte. And Arrow McGowan says, fáilte from Berkeley. Fáilte indeed. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Drive, says Pat. Keep the phone down and keep the truck between the ditches, Pat. Okay. Hello from the south of France, says Jean-Dominique Deltel. Bonsoir, mon ami. Fáilte. Eva Anderson says, hello, everyone. Fáilte, Eva. Veronica Casey, you're in fine form tonight. That's because I got everything working. So anyway, very briefly, and I'm not going to dwell on this because it's embarrassing. what happened was that Facebook has updated its app to include actually more functionality in its live broadcasts, not less. You can now select, you can see more about your viewers, you can wave at your friends, you can see who's liking each other's comments, you can see people who are talking to people, and you can also broadcast with some of your friends now. Now, that functionality has been included in the Facebook app, but what I've been doing for years is I've been using the Pages app on my phone to upload pictures and statuses and live broadcasts on Facebook. What I didn't know is that Pages and the main Facebook app are completely separate apps, and the functionality has not been included in the Pages app. In fact, the Pages app is obviously not able to talk to the Facebook app properly, because a lot of the things that you could do on the Facebook Pages app, for instance, go live, suddenly disappeared yesterday. And I didn't notice this until about 5 or 10 minutes before I was to start going live. So the fault is apparently entirely mine, nothing to do with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook at all. So I have to delete the rant and I have to rewind and go back into history and take it all back and eat my words. And I'm just going to consume at the end of this episode, I will consume a large slice of humble pie is what I will do. But anyway, it's sorted, because Tracy informed us that you can broadcast through your page through the main Facebook app. And indeed, when I did that last night after the failed broadcast, I realized you could do it. And I can see the extra functionality here in front of me. So all is good. Hello from Georgia, USA, says Melanie Corpy. Hello, Melanie. Giaguch, Trononawa. Good evening, Anthony and all, says Josephine. Me and Trononawa. Ta fáilte rot. Sandy Lawton says, I am about 35 minutes flying time from Juneau, and yes, it is 11:15 a.m. here, and that is Alaska. Wow. And it's approaching 8:15 p.m. here in Ireland. Rex Fortenberry says, Giaguch Arish au Baton Rouge. Fáilte, Rex. Lovely to see you again. Megan Walters says, a warm, muggy day in Mississippi. The still air is full of the scent of the gardenia blossoms and magnolia. Intoxicating, brilliant. Liam Smith says, Giariv, Anton August Natua, Fáilte Liam, good to see you. Okay, good evening from a cold but sunny Devon, says Lucy Robinson. Lovely to see you, Anthony. Missed you and those bookshelves last night. We'll be dipping in and out, but very interested in the astronomical insights. Fantastic stuff. Heather Geron Rice says, enjoying the sun after more gardening. Brilliant stuff, Heather. Fáilte. Nice to see you again. Sorry, Anthony, says Yvette. I thought you had great composure. I kept saying to myself, oh, how cool he is handling this. I was very distracted and it took me ages to get my pace. But anyway, it's grand. It's grand. So tonight, what are we on? 13 minutes. Tonight, we're talking about Orion again. Now, some of what we're going to do is going to be going over old ground from last night, partly because it was just so distracting. Tonight, I'm going to read more and talk off the cuff less. If I know that, for instance, the Facebook audience was way down on normal. There were only 26 people watching for the last half hour, and it can be as high as 100 and 120 at times. So I'm gathering that some people weren't able to switch over to YouTube because I think there were only 60 or 70 viewers on YouTube. I say only, I'm not complaining. But we'll cover a little bit of the ground again and hopefully introduce some more stuff. And then there's something very special that I'm going to read to you that I've only just written. So stay tuned to hear some brand new writing. And it all pertains to Orion and mythology. Greg B says, South Florida here. Fáilte, Greg, good evening to you. Irish Technical Thinker says, good evening. Marcus and Rachel watching from Belfast. I've run out of mead and currently brewing my own mead. Will Newgrange honey. When I brew, I will send you a bottle of magical mead when ready. That sounds very nice, Marcus. And I will not refuse or decline your gift. Definitely. Serena Swift says, hello, nice to see everyone. Fáilte, Serena. Steve Martinson says, hello, Anthony and the Mythflix clan. Good evening to you also. Okay, so we're on, what are we on now? We're on 14:30. Oh, genie makers now. Anyway, let's get started. Orion. And so you will want to know, Jim Conway is a bit late. Don't worry, Jim. Better late than never. We're just about to start the reading. And tonight, before Yvette asks, Yvette, I know you're going to ask, Island of the Setting Sun. In Search of Ireland's Ancient Astronomers is what I'm reading from tonight. Of course, this is the second edition, which you'll recognise from the red star on the front, which says revised and updated edition. Theresa McGuinness says, I completely missed yesterday's mishap. You'll be glad you did. That's all I can say. The Milesians arrived in Ireland on the eve of the Feast of Bealtaine, a very important date in the pagan calendar. And there's that word that I say I don't use very much in my writing. And that's one of the words that I will change in the 2020 edition when, hopefully, fingers crossed, when COVID gets out of the way and, becomes a thing of the past, fingers crossed, there'll be a 2020 edition of Islands. And Robin Edgar is in the house. It's nice to see you. Fáilte, Robin. Good to see you also. Talia Brown says, hello, Anthony and Tua. Good evening from Glastonbury. Fáilte. And of course, we had a whole series of Bealtaine events last week, which were really, really lovely, in conjunction with the lighting of the fire last Tuesday night at Ishnach by David Clark and family. And the bit of reading that I'm going to do from my recent writing is all connected. Wait till you hear. I'm hoping that you'll be as excited as I am. Alex Casterton sent me a message. Yeah, I might have missed that, Alex. I know that I'm getting a lot of correspondence at the moment, and I am finding it hard to keep up with it, but I'll check it out later on. It marked the end of the dark half of the year and the beginning of the bright half. It was a feast associated with fires and the ritual eating of certain kinds of food. Astronomically speaking, the information given in the Book of Invasions is very important. Bealtaine was one of the four great Celtic calendar feasts, which are known today in archaeoastronomy as the cross-quarter days. Movanway says, hi, Anthony and Tua. Really enjoyed catching up with the Orion video this afternoon. Fascinating. I'm glad you enjoyed it, despite the hiccups. Each of these feasts is located halfway, and we spoke about this the other night, measured in days between the solstices and equinoxes. Hence, Bealtaine is halfway between spring equinox and summer solstice. The Leabhar Gabhála, which is the Book of Invasions, says that the Milesians arrived on the 17th day of the moon, indicating again that the moon was indeed used in the calculation of days in the ancient calendar. However, it is when we simulate the heavens on the eve of that date, 1st of May 1694 BC, that a whole correlation of astronomical and mythological information occurs to give a much bigger picture. Using SkyMap to zoom back in time to 1694 BC. There's Tracy now. Hello, Tracy, who helped save us last night from the fires of hell. An epoch known by archaeologists, or from the fire from the pit of darkness. An epoch known by archaeologists as the Bronze Age. We see that the sun is located near the horns of Taurus, a little to the east, left, in fact, above the very human-like form of the constellation of Orion. The line of the ecliptic, which is the imaginary line or ring the sun follows through the zodiac, passes very close to the raised arm of Orion. One could say it looks like the sun is actually in the hand of Orion. The mythic iconography of the giant sky hunter with the moon, sun, and planets passing above his head would prove very important in our decipherment of the myths and sites of the Boyne Valley. But for the moment, there are two primary reasons for its importance. The first is that Orion is one of the constellations which, down through time, I actually have my notes. I just want to make sure that I just read the right sections and don't read any more than I need to, because I will delay the reading of the new material towards the end. Tracy's just joining us. I'm going to be reading from my new book, which is in progress. But I think it's important to the subject in hand, and the fact that what I'm going to be reading emerged as we were doing all this. It's incredible. Anyway, I hope you find that it's interesting. The first is that Orion is one of the constellations which, down through time in different countries across the globe, is identified almost universally as a large human figure, a giant of the night sky. Orion is a great hunter of classical legend. We believe he features strongly in what we call Irish sky myths. Amergin himself proclaimed, "I am a gigantic sword-wielding champion." The second reason this point in the sky is important, and we covered some of this last night, is because it is one of only two places in the entire night sky where the ecliptic, the sun's path among the stars, intersects with the bands of the Milky Way, the heavenly river of the illuminated cow, the Boyne of the cosmos. And I spoke last night about the moon and the planets, and I said they don't exactly follow the ecliptic. What they do is they follow what you would call an ecliptic band through the sky, so that they do separate from the ecliptic a little bit. So if you have stellarium, have a look at stellarium and look at Venus right now. Venus is close to one of the horns of Taurus, and you'll see that it's above the ecliptic. It's not actually exactly on the ecliptic. So there's this band that we could call the ecliptic band. The ecliptic line or ring specifically is the journey of the sun through the zodiac constellations. The band is the one that would cover the moon and the planets as well. On the date of the arrival of the Milesians to Ireland, the sun was positioned in the raised hand of Orion in the Milky Way River. The other point where the ecliptic crosses the cosmic boyne is located in the gap between the zodiac constellations of Sagittarius and Scorpius, and occurs 6 months after Bealtaine on the first day of November, the Celtic feast of Samhain, the beginning of the dark half of the year. The division of Ireland into two kingdoms by Erimon and Eber, and they were Amergin's brothers, one taking north and the other south of the Boyne, the earthly Milky Way, began to make sense taking the astronomical evidence into account. Their rule over the land did not last long before their contentions began, as mentioned earlier. Their joint rule lasted only a year. Could this tale be interpreted astronomically? And to find out... No, we'll keep reading. No, I won't, because there's too much to read. But basically, I suggested that the Milky Way of the sky formed a dividing boundary between the kingdoms of the two kings, and that the Milky Way on the earth, which is the Boyne, also did likewise on the geographic telluric earthly territory. And that Millmount on Slane, which are both prehistoric mounds or moats, one on Slane where Patrick lit the Paschal fire, and Millmount and Drogheda where Amergin is supposed to be buried, are located on either side of the Boyne River. Slane Mound to the north and Millmount Mound to the north. Okay, good. Now we can continue to the next section. And then last night we mentioned, somebody says, hi, Coda. That's not actually Coda. I'll tell you why, Kathy. It's because Coda is actually out for a walk at the moment with the twins. Luke and Josh have Coda out for a walk. So he's not that. I do hear the dog you're talking about. Your hearing's not bad, in fairness. It's very good. Coming in late. Hello, everyone, says Edina Sparks. Fáilte, Edina. Stellarium is also... Is that available for phone, smartphone, Robin? I only have it on my PC, but I find it brilliant on the PC for having a look at the sky. Okay, I think we're up to date. The story of Nuadu's silver arm. We talked about this last night, and instead of just rabbiting on tonight, I'm going to do a bit of reading. Is a curious one indeed. Nuadu was a central figure in the Tuatha Dé Danann conquest of Ireland and their first king. The Tuatha Dé Danann were said to have brought 4 great artifacts to Ireland with them. They were the Lia Foil, the Stone of Fall, brought to Tara, which was said to shout when touched by the rightful king of Ireland. The Spear of Lugh, against which there was no victory, because it was said no battle was ever won against either the spear or the person who wielded it. Pardon me. The Dagda's Cauldron, from which no one ever left unthankful, and the Sword of Nuadu. When it was drawn from its deadly sheath, no one ever escaped from it, and it was irresistible, and that is, of course, the Sword of Nuadu. Kristen Murray Endre says, glad to be able to join everyone today. Looking forward to the discussions. Hi, Kristen. Tranonawa. The Tuatha Dé Danann formed an alliance with the Fomorians, the giants of the sea, in which the Fomorian king Balor, who we met in chapter 1, and his daughter Ethna to Cian, son of the Tuatha Dé Danann healer Dian Cecht. Through the union of Cian and Ethna, the gifted child Lugh, or Lugh Lawfada, was born. In the first battle of Moitura, the Tuatha Dé Danann routed the Fir Bolg, killing 100,000 of them. It was in this battle that Nuadu's hand was cut off by Shreng, son of Sengen. The Tuatha Dé Danann healer Dian Cecht is said to have fashioned a new hand made of silver, which was said to move like any other hand. Thus, the epithet Aragat Lov, meaning silver hand, was given to Nuadu. Now, before I continue, the one thing I didn't mention at this point last night is the link with Star Wars. Many of you will know, but some of you possibly won't know, that behind the whole movie franchise of Star Wars, especially the original 3 movies, episodes 4, 5, and 6, Joseph Campbell, the comparative mythologist who we've quoted from on a number of occasions, especially in relation to Venus at Newgrange, for instance, he advised George Lucas, particularly in relation to the mythology that informed some of the storylines. One of the storylines is directly out of Irish mythology. Robin says Stellarium. I have Stellarium on my phone, but it's rather limited. Okay, well, the PC version is very good, and I really, really enjoy it. But I might have a look at the phone version just to see. So anyway, in The Empire Strikes Back, I think, isn't it? Luke, against the advice of his trainer, his Jedi master teacher, Yoda, decides he's going to confront the evil Darth Vader. Tracy says, I just watched Star Wars #2 the other night. Anakin's arm at the end was a silver one. There you go. I think that has to be episode 3, Tracy, if I'm not mistaken. It's the end of episode 3 where Anakin falls into the fire and gets grievously wounded and has to have his robotic arms made and all that. But anyway, that's a theme you see in Star Wars. But anyway, Luke confronts Darth Vader. They have a lightsaber battle. Vader chops off Luke's hand and his lightsaber. They go flying off down through this big porthole, this massive precipitous space in the spacecraft that they're on. And Darth Vader says, join me. Come over to the dark side. You don't know the power of the dark side of the Force. And Luke says, no, I'll never do that. I'll never do that. And he says, your father. No. Anthony. Obi-Wan, who was Anakin's or Darth Vader's Jedi trainer, master thing, Yokami buzzer. I can't get the right words out. Obi-Wan never told you about your father. And Luke says, he told me enough. And he goes, Luke, I am your father. And this is a moment where, and it's a very, very famous moment in cinematic history, because the audience is gasped at this point. This is a real page turner, as you would say if you were reading it in book form. A real plot twist that the evil overlord who was overseeing so much death and destruction was actually Luke's father. And Luke can't believe it and denies it and screams out and all the rest. But at the end of that movie, you'll see Luke in a hospital ship, and you'll see that he has been given a robotic arm. And you'll even see a robot going like this with the tendons. And as he does, the fingers are flicking. And the arm looks like it's a fleshy arm, but there's an opening which shows that it's a robotic arm. Also, think of Terminator, where Terminator cuts along his arm in front of the Cyberdyne guys and starts pulling his flesh off to reveal the metal arm. I'm not sure if that's inspired by Nuadu, but certainly the story about Luke and Darth Vader and Vader chopping his arm off and him getting a robotic arm is inspired by Cop Maithura, the second battle of Maithura. Katrina says, Gomala scale on Uber Inu, Egg Uber Inu. Ach, translate directly from Irish to English. You should sound like Yoda. Have fun without me, Akarja. Is Vader live? Good evening, Katrina. I completely understand. Don't worry. I know. I had a busy day working today myself, and I didn't get a chance to do a live broadcast as I said I would. But look, this is life, and it's a good complaint to be working. Oh, where was I now? Because his hand had been chopped off, Nuadu was stripped of the kingship and deemed disqualified from holding the position, and was replaced on the throne by Bress, Eventually, through episodes too lengthy to recount at this juncture, Nuadu regained kingship of Ireland and held sovereignty over the Tuatha Dé. Of course, we spoke about that last night, and we've also covered it in our episode about Cotmai Chura, etc., etc. It was at this time Nuadu held a great feast at Tara, during which Lulav Fada declared himself the Samuel Dalmach, the many-gifted. During the course of our research work, Richard and I have often found ourselves looking towards the heavens to help with the interpretation of the myths. In the case of Nuadu, we had been beaten to it by William Battersby, the author of The Age of Newgrange, who was the first to propose that the mythical Nuadu silver hand might have been inspired by the constellation which we know today as Orion. Our reasons for connecting Nuadu with Orion might have been somewhat different to those of Battersby, but nonetheless, he is to be credited for what was a significant statement. I will show you the book, but bear in mind this was a self-published work, and you may be lucky to be able to get a copy somewhere on ABE Books or and that is what it looks like. William Battersby passed away a number of years back. And I had the pleasure of meeting him on several occasions at Newgrange and Douth, especially at winter solstice. So that is it's a booklet, actually, really. The Age of Newgrange The Age of Newgrange, Astronomy and Mythography by William Battersby. Okay. No spoilers, Anthony, says Robin. Yeah. Sorry. If you've never seen Star Wars, I've just given you a very, very substantial spoiler, but I couldn't really help it, you know. Battersby proposed that Nuadu was a, quote, walker god, unquote. Hi, Dave. Quote, unquote. Citing Stonehenge author John North as his inspiration, Battersby equated Orion with the walker god Nuadu, who would be seen to walk along the ridge across the River Boyne from Newgrange in the Neolithic. He furthermore stated that North's discovery, quote, reveals a feature of Newgrange and Loughcrew likely to play a big part in the ultimate decipherment of the two sites and indeed the whole period, unquote. And we are inclined to agree, but before we reach Newgrange, we must explore Nuadu's links with Tara. It is a matter of extraordinary coincidence that, at the time the Boyne monuments were constructed, the brightest star in the sky, Sirius the Dog Star, shared the same declination as winter solstice sun, and therefore rose and set at the same place on the horizon as the sun did on the shortest day of the year. Viewed from Aurigeen or Amergin's mound at Millmount, Sirius would set precisely in the direction of the hill of Tara. This is interesting because of an episode involving Cuchulainn, another giant warrior who could easily be equated with Orion, in which he attempted to woo Emer. And this is from Tuchmark Emera, The Wooing of Emer. Emer told him, I am a Tara of women, the whitest of maidens, one who is gazed at but does not gaze back. A rush too far to be reached, an untrodden way. Throughout the ages, and we're basically trying to say there that that is a poetic kenning or a poetic way of saying that she is Sirius. Throughout the ages, Sirius has been connected to Orion by astronomers and stargazers because Orion is seen to herald the rising of the dog star. Canis Major, the large dog, has from the earliest times been known as the Dog of Orion. In fact, the three stars of Orion's belt form an imaginary line which points in the direction of Sirius. In Greek legend, the two dog constellations Canis Major and Canis Minor were the hunting dogs of Orion. With Sirius setting over Tara in the Neolithic, could this event have been presaged by something Orion did? Surely if the rising of Sirius is preceded or announced by Orion, it follows that Orion sets before Sirius does. Using astronomy software widely available for the home computer, we can take ourselves back in time to the Neolithic and recreate what the sky looked like back then. And it did look somewhat different. Due to a phenomenon called precession of the equinoxes, the sun's vernal point, and of course we described this last night and in numerous other episodes, that is, the point where the sun's path crosses the celestial equator at the vernal equinox, is slowly drifting westwards through the 12 zodiac constellations. One complete cycle takes 25,920 years. Back in the Neolithic, the vernal point was in Taurus, the bull constellation, a possible explanation for the persistence of bull mythology in Ireland. With our computer locked on the date 3200 BC, the epoch for the construction of Newgrange, the other Boyne mounds, etc., we can take a look at how the constellations were behaving. Looking towards the southwest, we see that Sirius the Dog Star shares the same setting place as winter solstice sun. If we work backwards in time from the setting of Sirius, we see that the Orion constellation Ar-Nuadu does something very interesting. After walking along the ridge, he appears to set over the hill of Tara, with Millmount as our viewing location. Specifically, the famous Orion Nebula sets at the winter solstice point. This would mean that astronomers would have viewed three important settings over Tara: the winter solstice sun, Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, and the Walker god constellation Nuadu, the king of Tara. Leafing through our old folklore, which is an Irish word for dictionary, we found that one way of referring to Orion is Slot an Rí, which literally translated means the scepter of the king. In another folklore, we find that Slot an Rí specifically refers to Orion's belt. We read also that the belt and dagger were known as an slot agus an bhánláimh. Bhánláimh is a unit of measure, the equivalent of a cubit, also called a bandle. But one must wonder, in the case of Orion, if Banláimh was a corruption of Bánláimh, which would mean white hand. Ban, B-A-N-N, on its own can mean a belt, a chain, or a band, reminding us of Lew's chain, which, according to Charles Squire, was the Milky Way. If all of this seemed a bit circumstantial, our guess that Nuadu could be Orion was cemented through the association of his nickname with the Milky Way. Aragat, the first component of the name Aragat-Láimh, is an old Irish word for silver and is also used to describe money. An bhfuil in Aragat agat, do you have any money? Presumably because of its metallic composition. The fixing of a silver hand for Nuadu by Dian Cecht seems to fit better in a Hollywood movie than it does in an old Irish myth. We've gone through that. But if we take a closer look at the typical representation of the Orion constellation, we see that his upraised arm sits amidst the bright bands of the Milky Way galaxy, which, in this area of the sky, runs past Orion's shoulder, marked by the red giant star Betelgeuse. The unpronounceable Betelgeuse, that some people call Betelgeuse, and Betelgeuse comes from the Arabic Ibd al-Jawza, which means the armpit of the central one. Nuadu's sobriquet, silver hand, was probably derived by the myth makers from the fact that the Nuadu constellation's upraised hand is embedded in the silvery Milky Way. In the collection of place name lore, the Denshennachus, we see that the River Boyne. What time are we on? Oh, we're good. I have to read 5 pages of typescript to you as well. We see that the River Boyne, which we have already linked with the Milky Way, is described thus: from the well of righteous Mochwa to the bounds of Mead's wide plain, the arm of Nuada's wife and her leg are the two noble and exalted names. From the bounds of goodly Meath till she reaches the sea's green floor, she is called the Great Silver Yoke and the White Marrow of Phalimid. These metrical verses describe the origin of place names on the ground, but could this also be a description of the heavenly Boyne, the Balach na Bó Finna? The Great Silver Yoke, besides its obvious link with Nuadu's upraised silver hand, also brings to mind Lew's chain, the Milky Way, because the word yoke can mean something which binds or forms a bond, like a chain. But the verse explicitly states that the river's two names were the arm of Nuadu's wife and her leg. Leg is translated from Culpa, so we see again a possible connection on the ground at Inver Culpa, the meeting of the waters in the Boyne estuary. And that's where we meet Amergin, the astronomer, and his burial mound, the Millmount, which is a crucial keystone for the interpretation of Tara's astronomical myths. In the course of our investigations, we were continuously seeing a strong connection between sky and ground through the astro myths. If Nuadu was the Orion of the ancients, there are other elements of the star stories which make the context of a sky-ground connection. Which make sense in the context of a sky-ground connection. The Lia Foil, which is the coronation stone. There is some debate as to whether this is the true stone of Foll. According to tradition, it would roar under the foot of each king that took possession of the throne of Ireland. And remember, it was brought to Ireland by the Tuatha De Danann, according to Laura Gawala. That tradition furthermore states that the name of this stone is derived from Fo Oil, which means the understone, that is, the stone under the king. That's in quotes. The Lia Foil is commonly referred to as the Stone of Destiny. If we imagine ourselves perched atop Amergin's Millmount back in the Stone Age, the Nuadu constellation would set in the direction of the Hill of Tara. In other words, the king appears to be touching the Lia Foil. Is this what the legend of the Lia Foil is about? Orion's setting over Tara could be encoded in the astro myth as the king touching or sitting upon or even putting his foot on the Lia Foil. Remember that after the invasion of the Milesians, Eramon became king, ruling from Tara, a place chosen for him by, among others, Amergin, whose nickname was Bright Knee, the bright foot or knee star, now known under its Arabic name, Rigel, which may have signified the left leg of the giant, would appear to set in the general direction of the Hill of Tara, viewed from Millmount. Now, keep all of that in your mind for a moment. And just to refresh, you're standing at Millmount, which is Amergin, the astronomer's mound, and you're looking at Tara, which is his brother Eramon and Eramon's wife's place of reign, where the Milesian kings would be descended, all their descendants would reign from. And winter solstice sun sets over Tara, viewed from Millmount, but so too does Orion. And Orion, the king of the sky, is basically standing on the Lia Foil. He's touching it, and it's perhaps screaming under him. Now, bear all of that in mind for what follows. What follows is I am going to read from my new book, which I'm writing at the moment. Now, I don't have a title decided for it. It's about astronomy and it's about mythology, and it's about part of it is a little bit biographical. It's about my own journey into astronomy and how I became hooked on it when I was young, and how it has enthralled and captivated people of many, many generations and many different tribes and cultures and nations across the world for years and years and years. Now, so this is all material that I've written inside the past week, and I think you'll agree that this could be included in our episode about synchronicities, which SYNCH, which was episode 45. Episode 45 was called Synchronicity, Serendipity, and Spontaneity, and is actually one of the episodes of Live Irish Myths that has provoked the greatest reaction in terms of correspondence from people reaching out saying they thought it was thoroughly fascinating. And here's something that happened to me that was fascinating. So bear in mind that Island of the Setting Sun, we began researching for that in 1999. Richard started telling me about these myths in 1999, 21 years ago. I became utterly captivated by the idea that the ancient Irish had constellations, and that they saw Orion perhaps as a king of the sky. And remember Clímaí, the armed king that we mentioned yesterday and in other episodes, the armed king of the Cork peasant who told Charles Vallancey in the 18th century that Orion was Clímaí, which meant the armed king, and we're thinking about Nuadu. What follows, folks, is what it is. And I know, I just know in my heart and soul it's going to provoke a reaction. I may find it difficult to read because I find when extraordinary events happen that it tends to be quite... it's like a whirlwind, it picks you up off the ground, and it carries you into the air. Your heart flutters, your body trembles, and sometimes the voice cracks and things get a little bit emotional. So I'm going to just read. So from this point forward, this is my new book, which doesn't have a name yet. But could I just say that absolutely central to this book, the central theme is, people say, what's it about? It's about astronomy, but it is hooked and rooted on that great constellation that we call Orion, because that constellation is very dear to my heart as the one that I first recognized from a star map book at the age of 6 or 7, and which absolutely enthralled and captivated me and has continued to do so ever since. And of course, it's got connections with Uisneach and Bealtaine. More extraordinary still than the long duration of the Bealtaine fire at Uisneach is its ability to stir hope. Feeling sanguine in the wake of watching the fire on my computer screen and then lighting my own small Bealtaine blaze in the chimney in our backyard, I watched Betelgeuse with a heart full of hope. And of course, the theme here is about the fading of Betelgeuse in recent months, and it has returned to brightness because people thought it was going to blow up, and that's going to be a big theme in the book as well. And this was last Tuesday night, Tuesday of last week, so just over a week ago, when David, Clark and Angela and their family lit the fire at Bealtaine at Uisneach. And then I lit a fire here, and we had lovely sharing and a lot of hope that night, and it was wonderful to see. When I sat down to write about Bealtaine evening and the events thereof, one of the things I needed to do was ascertain the distance at which Uisneach lies from my home. Now, I've already revealed some of this, but this is more detail and something else magic on top of it. I used Google Earth for this purpose, and specifically its ruler tool, something I've been using with great success for many years in the investigation of long-distance alignments of Irish prehistoric and sacred sites. I placed a drop pin, Google Earth calls these place marks, on Isle na Muireann, the Stone of Divisions at Uisneach, and then another on my house in Drogheda, specifically at the precise location of my office here, where all my books are written and all my Mythical Ireland work is done. And that's I'll probably reword that, because indeed some of my Mythical Ireland work is done out in the field, like discovering Dronehenge was done 4 or 5 miles away. Using the ruler tool, I dragged out a line. One would more accurately describe it as an arc, since it follows the curvature of the earth, between Isle na Muireann and my home. This is all on TypeScript, by the way. This is all typed on my 1952, early 1950s Olympia SM4 typewriter. Imagine my surprise and delight when I discovered upon tracing this line across the landscape between Westmeath and Louth that it crosses the site of a huge monument close to Newgrange, which has become known as Dronehenge. This is an enormous late Neolithic henge measuring 154 metres, just over 500 feet in diameter, that I discovered while flying my drone in the company of friend and fellow photographer and researcher of ancient sites, Ken Williams, during a drought in the summer of 2018. Pardon me. We found a number of other previously undocumented sites too, and the story of our discoveries made headlines all around the world. There is a remarkable narrative behind the discovery of Dronehenge, the build-up to it, and the aftermath of the revelations. Excuse me. It is a tale full of serendipity, synchronicity, and intrigue. One could even say there's a little bit of magic in it too. The footprint of Dronehenge lies beneath the fertile soil of Newgrange Farm and is invisible on the surface most of the time. The extraordinary dry conditions leading up to its discovery on the 10th of July 2018 revealed it in extraordinary and exquisite detail. Its discovery was remarkably fortuitous and leaves me in no doubt that there are deeper and perhaps mystical forces at work in our lives that are not accounted for by rational and secular branches of Western thought. Such forces seemed to be again at play when I realised that my home and Dronehenge were very precisely aligned with Isle na Muireann, the sacred heart, navel and centre of Ireland. More specifically, the line or arc between my house and Isle na Muireann passes exactly over the porch feature of Dronehenge, which may have served as its ceremonial entrance or an opening for the setting sun to allow the Lughnasa light into the interior of the monument. And in fact, I know I adjusted this when I paste in the text from the TypeScript into Microsoft Word, I make any edits. And I forgot when I was typing that indeed that opening would also allow the setting sun at Bealtaine into Dronehenge. And remember that I discovered this at Bealtaine, so that's very significant. This fortuitous alignment of two monuments with my house is just a coincidence, right? One of those remarkable flukes, the sort of thing that makes you stop and wonder and scratch your head. But what was it that impelled me to choose Isle na Muireann as the anchor point for Uisneach instead of the site of the Bealtaine fire itself, which is near the peak of the hill, about 400 metres away from the Stone of Divisions? That alignment still intersects the northern quadrant of Dronehenge, but misses the porch entrance feature. Years ago, I became familiar with the work of Michael Dames, an author who had written a beautiful and very fascinating book, and we read some of it very recently in relation to Eru, didn't we? And also in relation to Uisneach, called Mythic Ireland, later republished as Ireland, A Sacred Journey. In this seminal work, Dames proposed that there were a series of alignments of sacred and ancient sites radiating from Uisneach, and specifically Isle na Muireann. In recent years, I took time to study some of these proposed alignments and became particularly interested in Dames's proposed summer solstice sunrise alignment from Isle na Muireann, which he indicated in a straight line intersecting both Sliabh na Coille, one of the hills of the Loughcrew megalithic complex, and Sliabh Gullion, a mountain in County Armagh. Gullion is almost 64 miles or 103 kilometres from Isle na Muireann. My investigation of the Isle na Muireann, Sliabh na Coille, Sliabh Gullion alignment using Google Earth revealed the extraordinary precision of same. Isle na Muireann, the stone of divisions at Uisneach, Cairn T at Loughcrew, also called the Cailleach's Cairn, and another prehistoric passage grave on the top of Sliabh Gullion called the Caille Beara's House are all very precisely in line, such that a line drawn on Google Earth from Isle na Muireann to the Caille Beara's House on Sliabh Gullion passes accurately through Cairn T at Loughcrew. One question remains about this supposed arrangement of monuments. Was it intentional or accidental? That is a question we may never be able to answer. Certainly in the case of an alignment of my house with Dronehenge and Isle na Muireann, we can say with a fair degree of certainty that when my house was built in the late 1990s, the builder knew nothing about the direction of Isle na Muireann, and neither would he have cared a jot. There was no objective on the builder's part to intentionally line up one house in an estate of many houses with significant sites of prehistory, one of which would not be discovered for at least another 20 years. In the cold light of day, the alignment is entirely coincidental. But it is also very precise and connects the henge and its discoverer with the navel stone of Ireland along a 51-mile or 82-kilometre invisible pathway that is heavily laden with significance. When one has moved beyond the notion of intentional alignment and accepts that such intent was completely absent because it would have been impossible to A, predict who would buy and live in the house in question, and B, forecast that a giant late Neolithic henge monument lay concealed beneath the soil at Newgrange Farm and would later be discovered through serendipity by the occupant of that house, one enters a different realm of reality. This is a Jungian realm. Accepting that the alignment of these three locations or monuments is just incidental, one enters the domain of meaningful coincidences. Julianne Osborne is watching. Fáilte, Julianne. In this case, profoundly meaningful coincidences. But the story does not end there. In fact, it becomes even more fascinating. In many cases, during 21 years of research into prehistoric and sacred sites of ancient Ireland, I have looked not just at long-distance alignments of such sites, but also at whether they might be associated with significant astronomical events, such as, for instance, the rising or setting sun on a solstice or equinox, or the rising or setting place of a bright star or significant constellation. The finding of such alignments does not vindicate a hypothesis that this was the intention of their builders, but in a number of cases, these long-distance arrangements of sites are imbued with deep meaning. Having found that my house, and specifically that part of the house where all my writing work is done, is aligned precisely with the entrance or porch of Dronehenge and Isle na Muireann at Uisneach, I soon felt the yearning to investigate whether that accidental in quotes, alignment of sites had a further astronomical or cosmological significance. The weight of experience and the seeming impossibility of some of the major moments of synchronicity I've experienced around my work led me to suspect that I would indeed find a meaningful alignment to something in the heavens. What I did not suspect was the possibility that there would be a profound and categorical connection with the subject of this book. So I did what I have done on countless occasions over the years and launched my astronomy software, in this case the program Stellarium, which we've been talking about tonight. This software is set up so that it shows the sky as it is seen from the location of my home in Drogheda. I turned the horizon until I was looking a short distance south of west. I zoomed in so that I could more precisely position my cursor at 253 degrees of azimuth. Now I have to read from the screen for a moment because I expanded this couple of sentences slightly when I put it into Microsoft Word. Noting the features on the artificially rendered horizon there, I began to fast forward the movement of the sky so that I could see what stars, constellations, and even planets might set there. I watched as several constellations passed through the view and beneath the horizon. These included Hydra, the water snake, Virgo, Aquarius, and Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. There's Coda back from his walk. The only bright or significant star of note to come close to setting at that point was Alphard, the brightest star in Hydra, which set at 250 degrees. Close, but no cigar. I observed as Cetus the whale glided through the view and beneath the horizon, but no bright or significant star set at the point of alignment. Then, slowly, but with smooth progression, I watched as Orion loomed into view in the upper left portion of the computer monitor. No way, I thought to myself as it glided gently towards the magic spot where my 250 degrees of azimuth was centered on the screen. I held my breath in excited anticipation and stared gleefully as Rigel, the bright knee or foot star of Orion, touched the horizon at 250 degrees azimuth. I stopped the animation and zoomed out. There was Orion, standing on the earth, his belt horizontal, his bright foot or knee star resting on the horizon, the seventh brightest of all the stars. Directly above it, also positioned at 253 degrees of azimuth, but at 20 degrees of altitude and therefore a good distance above the horizon, was Betelgeuse, the star that was the inspiration for writing this book. I could scarcely believe it. In fact, I let out such a loud exclamation, it may in fact have been a profanity, that my wife Anne, who was in the back garden, asked me what was up. I went out to her, my body trembling with excitement, and shook my head several times. What is it? She asked, slightly concerned. I was unable initially to get the words out in any coherent order or sense, but after a few moments of pacing around the garden, shaking my head, I eventually blurted out something like, "Oh, I just made another fascinating discovery." I had already told her about the extraordinary alignment of our house with Dronehenge and Isle na Muireann. When I told her that this alignment points towards the place where Orion touches the horizon, she was amazed, as was I. What were the chances that A, these three locations would line up precisely, and B, that they point towards Orion's setting point? For months, I had watched Orion through the winter, anxiously wondering if I was witnessing the demise of a beloved star, Betelgeuse. I had seen it wane to such a dim magnitude as has never been seen before in modern times. It had faded to such an extent that it appeared to be equal in volume to its sister shoulder star, Bellatrix. And then, when no one on Earth could tell whether it had entered its death throes, it started to brighten again. Within 6 weeks, it had returned to full vitality. By that time, Orion was rapidly drifting, evening by evening, closer to the west, and was appearing later and later as the evening stretched and the twilight lingered later. Little did I know when I was observing Orion on the 19th of April and could not see Rigel because it was already too low in the sky, obscured by trees and perhaps touching the horizon. I was looking along a sacred pathway, so to speak, that connected my house with Dronehenge and Isle na Muireann. The two brightest stars of Orion, Betelgeuse and Rigel, were marking out this holy routeway to the heart and navel of Ireland, its axis mundi. The armed king was placing his foot on the earth above Dronehenge and the Stone of Divisions, signifying perhaps the trail of my own pathway through enchantment and divination, through impossible coincidence and bountiful serendipity, to the places where my heart had carried me on a long and fruitful journey out of darkness to a place full of fire and light. It was another Amergin moment for me. Amergin Glungyal was the one who rightly declared, What land is better than this island of the setting sun? It was phrased as a question, but a rhetorical one. Placing his foot, his Rigel, on the shore of the Boyne River, his Eridanus, he had come to Ireland with his brothers to take Ireland from the Tuatha De Danann, but at that point no taking was needed, for the Tuatha De were willing to hand it over. Amergin of the Bright Knee had colloquy with the tutelary or guardian goddesses of Ireland, and the last and greatest of these, Eru, he met at Uisneach. Amergin was the one who told Eru that her name would be the principal name of Ireland. Only when this happened, at Ireland's sacred centre, could the Milesians have hoped to return to the shores of this fair island and have any hope of attaining it for themselves from the Tuatha De Dananns. Watching Orion in the April twilight, it might have seemed that some long-forgotten prophecy of prehistory was being fulfilled. Bright Knee was at Uisneach again, and a fire was blazing in the heart of the one who watched from afar. To say that this alignment of my writing desk, Dronehenge, Ailnamirin, and Rigel and Betelgeuse is laden with coincidence and deep personal significance would be to try to put in words something that is almost indescribable. How apt, then, that I have long considered Amergin to be the embodiment in mythology of the great constellation that I have loved since my youngest years. As the poet or bard of the Milesian brothers, it was he who became their spokesperson in their dealings with the Tuatha De Danann chiefs and deities, not the more politically or militarily inclined brothers such as Don, Erimon, or Eber. In early medieval Ireland, the poet or Olav held almost equal rank to the king. It was the poet of the Milesians who effected their sanctified takeover of Ireland. It was Amergin who calmed the storm that had been created by the De Dananns to harass, beleaguer, and scatter the Milesian fleet as they tried to accomplish their second landing. Through words of magic and invocation, Amergin quelled the tempest, and it was he who, on behalf of his many brothers, finally placed his foot on the shore of the Boyne, a symbolic act that was akin to the ancient kings standing on the coronation stone in days of old. The arrival of the sons of Mill occurred, according to the Book of Invasions, on the 17th day of the moon, i.e. on the day of the full moon, and on the calends of May, i.e. at the time of Bealtaine. The annals of the Four Masters say the Milesians arrived in Ireland around 1700 BC. At the moment of their arrival, the sun was positioned in the raised hand of Orion among the waters of the Milky Way, the heavenly Boyne. The cosmology is mesmerizing. Amergin, as Orion, was holding the sun in his hand on the day of his long foretold arrival into the mouth of the River Boyne, the earthly Milky Way. His arrival was not just long preordained, it was written in the stars. He knew the place of the setting sun. Who but I knows the place where the sun sets? Because he was the one who carried it to the horizon in his hand. I have left myself speechless. Extraordinary stuff. Meaningful coincidence, major synchronicity, fabulous serendipity. It all happens, and it's been happening to me for years. And I'm just, I'm mesmerized by that. I really am mesmerized. I'm incapable of discerning and extrapolating its meanings beyond what I've written there. There's something deeply, deeply fateful and prophetic about it. It's like it all makes sense to me. It's amazing. It's extraordinary. It is incredible. But at the same time, I'm like, yep, it is what it is. And I'm kind of not surprised. There's this whole realization that at the same time that it is extraordinarily, impossibly fantastic, at the same time it is mundane, because it is as if I have known this sort of stuff since before I was born on this earth. I don't know if that makes any sense. But it's important to the story in relation to the Milesians and Orion and Amergin, because Amergin was the poet, you see. The poet, as I'm always saying, is the one who can express in words and in song the things that are inexpressible. Those concepts that are aloof and abstract, those aspects of our interrelationship with our fellow humans, our earth and our cosmos, that cannot be easily defined and described in astronomical or astrological texts. The sort of things that you can feel that you can only write creatively about and sing and create poetry about, rather than to try and define them and explain them and label them and put them in boxes, you know? So I, at the same time as I completely accept that the alignment of my office here with Dronehenge and Isle na Mirren is a coincidental alignment of 3 points on the earth, let's call them. That coincidental alignment is deeply, deeply imbued and laden with meaning that is at once personal, very personal to me and my own story, and at once immediately universal. Something that I can immediately share because of those massive, those undeniable and profound connections with old Irish stories and the alignments of prehistory and pre-Christian times, you know. So I actually don't know what else to say, except this has all, there's a connection here, of course, with Live Irish Myths, because I mean, yeah, I would have watched the Bealtaine fire live on Facebook one way or the other, but then I lit my own fire. And what you didn't see, because it happened either in between the two or after I lit my own fire, was that I stood at the end of the garden looking for Betelgeuse, because I've been concerned about it since October, November, when it started fading. A lot of people wanted it to go supernova. They wanted it to explode. I would be devastated by that. On the one hand, it would provide us with an opportunity to see a supernova close at hand, because Betelgeuse is about 700 light years away. But on the other hand, Orion would lose one of its most brilliant stars, and the sky would lose its 10th brightest star. And that to me would be utterly devastating. So I was watching for Betelgeuse, and I saw it glinting and glimmering and gleaming in the sky, and just, you know, the whole thing around that, and then I had this poetic notion that glinting and gleaming and glittering was actually at the same time as being Betelgeuse, which is a red, fiery, orangey star. I envisaged, or I imagined, that I was also looking at the fire at Uisneach, miles and miles away, and that's what prompted me to measure how far is it actually from my desk, or from the end of the office here where the garden is. How far is it from there to Isle na Mirren, or to the site of the fire? And when I measured it, then I realized, when I was dragging out the line, I saw it crossing Dronehenge, and I was like, oh, you're kidding me, you know? Extraordinary stuff. Really mind-blowing stuff. So tonight's episode was half about Orion in Irish mythology and half about, a very personal alignment. Okay, let's have a look at some comments. Go back up to the last one that I can see, because they tend to gives me goosebumps, says Kathy May Deo. Tracy O'Connor. So the alignment of Orion exact at the time of Bealtaine. Not precisely, no. It occurs a little bit before Bealtaine, because I think what happens coming up to Bealtaine is that Rigel at that time is below the horizon by the time it gets dark enough to see Orion. But I must actually examine that. Can't wait till the book is published, says Paula Snow Queen. That must feel so good, says Patricia. Yeah, it's strange, exhilarating, extraordinarily exhilarating experience. Movanway says, wonderful, Anthony. This is just beautiful, isn't it? Extraordinary stuff. He was with us on Bealtaine. That is amazing to yes, indeed, Margaret, as all you were, which is fabulous. You have such a gift with words, Anthony. It's beautiful to read your words as it is to hear you read them, says Desiree. And I hope you're getting on quite well with Mythical Ireland. I hope you're really enjoying it. Nora Gaffney O'Connor says, Tom King, it's incredible. It's as though the spirits of old has rewarded our Tua leader. But you see, this is the sort of cosmology, I think, that's important going back in time. The idea of that interrelationship of sky and earth, and the fact that the king of the sky is seen to be putting his foot on the earth, standing on the earth. And he was standing at Isle na Muireann. And remember that Isle na Muireann is not the coronation stone. The coronation stone is the one at Tara, from which Amergin was seen to be setting from his burial mound. So Amergin is looking towards the setting of Orion in the Neolithic or in prehistory. And he's looking at Rigel, the bright knee, Amergin bright knee, setting at Tara. So this is not about necessarily the political standing on the stone. It's got more to do, as Tracy keeps saying, Uisneach is about the heart. It's more about the heart than it is about the mind, you know, and the mind, I think, is associated with the will to political control, whereas the heart has got much more to do with that sort of heart of cosmology, and the cosmology of the Axis Mundi, the sacred stone, which connects the heavens with the earth, which connects all the provinces, where the guardian goddess of Ireland was, I don't know, lived and died and is buried, etc., etc. That's a massive missing piece of the jigsaw, Anthony, says Tracy. Yeah, it's powerfully extraordinary stuff. I agree, very emotional, just like Bealtaine evening. And I knew, Nora, there was something about Bealtaine. There was something very special about this Bealtaine. The fact that the 5,000 of us weren't supposed to be at Uisneach. We were supposed to stand off from it and watch it from afar. And it was that triggered me to have a look at the alignment. So I think that's why it was important. No such thing as coincidence, you know. Anthony is chosen. No, I'm just chosen to do these broadcasts. Neil, who's Mello, says there's a very strong connection between the three pyramids in Giza and Orion's belt. Orion seems to be a very important constellation. Of course, absolutely, Neil, indeed is right. Aaron Durrett says Anthony is so bound into the spiritual web of being in his beloved place with his beloved deities. This is how the energy of the place works through him and around him. Yes. It would be an interesting exercise to see how many houses in Drogheda are actually aligned on that line. That line continues from my house through Drogheda, so there would be a number of other properties. I did check out my childhood property where I first saw Orion, and it's not on that alignment. All over the world, yes, indeed. Jules says, I bow to you, Anthony. Incredible. No, there'll be no bowing. The only bowing that can be done here is in front of Helen, Her Royal Highness. No, I look, I consider myself honoured, definitely, to have been given the chance to live this extraordinary existence that I've had, which has had its considerable ups and downs. It hasn't all been rosy. But I can tell you, it's moments like that just make me, as I say, it's moments like that to make you feel that you've stepped into eternity. You know, it's extraordinary stuff. I think we're all stunned and emotional now, says Kathy May Deo. Movanway says, yes. Tracy has shivers all over. I know the feeling. Paula Snow Queen says, brilliant. Megan says, whoa, words are paltry in response. And that's exactly it. It's like you try to express it in words, but at the end of the day, the emotional reaction to the experience is so powerful that it's very, very difficult to verbalize what you're going through. You know, Nora says, Anthony, you're great. Look, your story gives me the shivers. Truly Jungian, says Nancy. Very powerful writing, says Adina Sparks. Well, I hate, it's not that I hate doing it, but I don't, you know, I have to write the thing. And now I'm 52,000 words into it, which is great. And I'm aiming to do about 80 or 90,000. So I'm making great progress on it. And spurred on by you guys, of course. And also, I think that you'll also want to read, I'm just saying, you'll also want to read Return to Segish, which is another very, very powerful piece of writing. I think I've moved from, I think Ireland has a place and a very important place in the story, of course. But at times it's quite technical, and I think I've moved towards the poetic. I think I've moved more towards the sacred writing to try and express the stuff that's not able to come out in the, in the technical writing. Holy, 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 says Yvette. That was amazing, says Nikki Hart. Really incredible and lovely to see your reaction. Alwyn says amazing. Margaret says sacred. You are the chosen one, says Paula Snow Queen. No, 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 no. We're all chosen ones, folks. The thing about it is that no tradition dies until the last person who honours it dies. Don't let me or anyone else who's talking about Irish myth be the last one. Let's propagate it. Let's bring it out there. And let's do it in the way that we've done it with the Mythflix Tua. Let's do it in the community of friendship and love and acceptance, because you've all been tremendous supporters of each other in this little Tua, this little but expanding Tua. He has left himself speechless. No emoji, says Patricia. Yeah, correct. Yeah. You've just blown me away. Truth does that, says Margaret. That was extraordinary, says Kathy. A sacred journey. Mariana, perfectly said. Michael Dames' own words, Ireland, a sacred journey. And he had this feeling that Isle na Muireann was the root of these radial alignments. Fantastic stuff. Harmonic convergence, says Macy Damon. Some past life regression, says Neil. Somebody has suggested to me before that I should do that, but to be honest, I'm just kind of happy enough to live in my own skin and see out my own life, But I'm not running the idea down, Neil. I'm not disparaging it in any way. Maeve says, makes absolute sense that you've known since before you were born. It's very hard to kind of say that and make any sense, but it's like, I suppose it's like everything in life, after your kids are born and you start to get to know them. There's times in my life when I've realized it's like, when I was younger, I did think about what my kids would be like if I ever had children. And then when you have your kids and you see them growing up, say, yep, I've known you since before you were born. I've known that this was how it was going to be, Oh, Margaret Ring is crying. It's all meant to be. You are super special. Thank you for sharing all of this. Says Angel Barboni Smith. Very, very beautiful name, Angel. It can only be understood through the language of the heart, says Tracy. Nodding my head so hard right now, says Macy Damon. Beautiful. I too have discoveries similar, says Scott Gracie. The Highlanders say folk like us have the second sight. Yeah, it's hard to kind of put, again, hard to put words on it. It's a sacred thing, isn't it? Sorry, I don't know what happened with the screen. Desiree Pether says, what you've said about knowing this stuff before you were born makes complete sense to me, as does the serendipity. Almost identical for me, but a different path. Still mythical. I would love to have a chat with you about it all. Absolutely. And we'll get that chance, Desiree, I'm sure. We can find the magic around us when we take time to quiet our inner noise, says Catherine Woodruff, which allows us to more clearly see ourselves and our surroundings. And of course, for me over the years, that silent time has been under the stars mostly, or in twilight, out taking photographs or standing near the monuments, Maybe that alignment may be partially what helps you channel the poets of old so beautifully, says Desiree. Who knows? Yeah. Kathy Millett says, my late mother called it being fey or fey, having unexplainable and intrinsic knowledge of things past that are passing through you. Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it, Kathy, and I think there's some sort of resonance to that. Angel says, you're doing exactly what you were put here for. I kind of feel that now, yeah. It was gleaming to show you, says Jules. Wow, says Kathy Maydeo. Good old Orion. He stirs up loads. He certainly does. Definitely a connection, Anthony. It's all meant to be. You were also meant to start all your social media to spread the word. Now you have an amazing tribe, and we have the very best of chiefs, says Nick. That's very nice of you to say, Nick. And I would definitely, if you were going to call me chief, you wouldn't be calling me Taoiseach, which means the chief of the tribe. I wouldn't have any issue with being called the bard, or the druid, but definitely not the king. I'm not into. I don't rule very well from that point of view. I don't do. In fact, it's a funny thing, but there are other people who've written about, sacred sites and mythology who've become sort of a little bit of a sovereign in their own right. rulers of their tribes. And I've always been very, very careful to make sure that the ego is checked at all times, that one doesn't get the impression of one's own self-importance, that these things, I'm lucky and I'm blessed that these things are kind of working through me and expressing themselves through me. That does not mean that it is me that is causing that to happen. So I do not elevate myself, and I'm always careful to check myself and to remain as humble as possible. Oh, I'm missing a whole load of YouTube comments as well. Note that Sirius most closely matched the solstice setting point in 3465 BC, says Archaeoastronomy Database, which is an interesting date because that is around sort of the period when, they're basically starting to, set up for the construction of the monuments of the Boyne Valley. Lovely writing and very good philosophical, says Marcus and Rachel. Sandrine says, hi, Anthony. Have you investigated the possibility that your house could have been built on a former archaeological site? Actually, I haven't really, Sandrine. And even in the 1990s, there wasn't any archaeology. I don't think there was any archaeological monitoring when this housing estate was being constructed. So it's entirely possible, of course, Definitely not coincidence, in my opinion, says Irish technical thinker. Mandy says, trusting your intuition. And of course, a big part of this is the intuitive. Bard by Morgan Llewellyn is the tale of the coming of the Irish to Ireland and of the men and women. This book tells the story of Amergin, the Bard, and his brothers, the sons of Milesius, says John Main. Flower Child says, this is fab. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Flower Child. I'm very glad to share. These past few episodes have been truly fascinating. Guru Mahagat, Anthony, says John Main. As on earth as it is in heaven, both linked together like a cosmic Swiss watch. Yes, indeed, Marcus. Yeah, very interesting way of putting it. Arrow McGowan. In sidereal astrology, the North Node is currently in Betelgeuse. The North Node, being an eclipse point, perhaps brings a relative dimming to the star it is housed in. Just a thought. Interesting. Anto, we caught the last half hour. That's the Woodsies in Monaster Boys. Getting hard to stay in and watch. We were working on the garden with the length of the evening. So you're going to keep going, maybe go a bit later into the evening. I think, yeah, that's an interesting point. One of the things I've been depriving myself is the opportunity to photograph these wonderful sunsets. So I don't know. I mean, I can't stop doing it right now, and I don't think I can change the time because it does seem to suit a lot of people. So I'm probably just going to have to push on. But you can bring your phone out into the garden and just have it playing in the background, Flower Child says, wow, this is a deep live, very, very heartwarming and lovely. River Faye, the mind questions, the soul knows. Yeah, very good. Jackie Stevenson, the universe is just giving you touch to let you know you are where you are supposed to be. Yeah, exactly. Those coincidences or synchronicities. A stellar episode, says Erica. You have a poet's soul. Oh, come on, stop the praise and ask some questions. The very, very best alignment and expressed so profoundly that I shall never forget today's broadcast. Fantastic, comforting, and of course, hopefully it'll all be available for posterity, as one says afterwards. Longti Menosi says, Anthony, the date of Bealtaine, you noted the alignment. Was that the present calendar date or the cosmological date of the 5th? Yeah. I'm not sure. Actually, I'm not sure what the question means. The 5th was the day halfway between vernal equinox and summer solstice. So the 5th was the official day of Bealtaine. What could we all discover if we learned to pay attention with an open heart and mind? Thank you for sharing your experiences, says Barbara Kling. Psychical and spiritual, or physical and spiritual, says Adrian Callan. It's very special that you have both the technical knowledge and the poetic spiritual connection to appreciate the skies on another level, and you have the words to share it. Yeah, it's an interesting combination of gifts, which I'm very grateful for. Jules says the stones are always shone from outside the ring. We're sorry we're late. No charger in car, says Vicky. Well, hopefully you'll enjoy the rerun, Vicky and Evan, because it was certainly an interesting evening. The universe is full of magical things patiently waiting for our wits to grow sharper. Eden Philpotts, and that quote copied there by Steve Martinson. It is only with the heart that one sees clearly what is essential is invisible to the eye. Alexander de Saint-Exupéry. Exupéry? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Dave Russell, thanks for that quote. Start digging up the gardens, says Movanwe. Yeah, funny enough, we've been doing a bit of digging, but not archaeological digging. Wonderful episode again. Don't know what we will do when the virus goes, says Rolf Waldron. Yeah, amazing the way the cosmic tides play out through our lives and mirror what we focus on, says Thalia. The feeling is mutual, says Neil. Barbara Murphy, without the dark, the light is less. True. So much love and energy in what you and my lovely tribe does for me, says Vicky. We're glad to do it. Your soul writing, says Veronica. Pat, Rowan, sacred, all of us, exactly. When are you going on Netflix, brother? Great stuff, says Paul Nolan. Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? When your soul knows another's soul. Anam Cara. My eldest son told me he dreamt I was pregnant again and it was a boy. He knew before I even knew, says Veronica Casey. Fascinating stuff. My sons and I know we've been here before, says Vicky. Maeve Fiona Callahan says, I've had moments of those profound feelings of connection and synchronicity about my ancestors, human as well as otherworld, but they're always coupled with a deep sadness because I am born in a land that had so little of my history and has so little of my history. My ancestors are not in the stone here, not in the trees, not in the hills. Cy says, do you believe what the first Newgrange people's belief, read the power of the afterlife and the power in Newgrange on the 21st does every year? I do. Absolutely. Yeah. Rowan Grove says it's a wonderful thing to be doing what you're meant to do. Homoraku on Fila. Neil, embrace your sacred starlight. You are never alone. That's very true, Pat. I always say on my community, I'm not a Druid elder to lead, but to walk the path and discuss as we go. That's a brilliant way of putting it, Alex. This is not about leadership and egos. Definitely not. I see you as a Druid. Was my first impression of you, says Angel Barboni Smith. Jack Roberts, whose work we've quoted on a couple of discussions, has become a very good friend of mine and who was part of Martin Brennan's research team in the 1980s. Secretly calls me behind my back. He refers to me as the Druid of Drogheda. Oh, Bard is a great book. The myths in novel form. I enjoyed it immensely. Patricia Langton is watching. Hello, Patricia. Fáilte. Know exactly how you feel about Land. Interesting. I'm not seeing any other comments. Is everyone else the same or is it just me? I'm seeing everything here. I'm seeing everything. I see everything. I'm seeing them all, Tracy. I'm not sure what the story is there. Barbara Murphy, I like working while listening, but then I miss the comments. Movanway says it might be interesting to look back at old maps of the area you're in. You can see them online sometimes. Yeah, I must actually go back again. I imagine the ancient astronomer poets feeling similarly thrilled and inspired as they made their own observations and watched predictions come true in the sky, says Megan. Absolutely. Do you think Dronehenge will ever be excavated, and would that be okay with you? I think it probably will be, but only very limited excavation. They don't do whole-scale excavations anymore, except for if there's a motorway or a housing estate can be built. And because it's in a UNESCO World Heritage Site, that's unlikely to happen. Touch wood when I say that, folks. Everybody touch wood. You never say never. So, yeah, I think that there will probably at some point be limited excavations, small, couple of small trenches dug across it, which could tell us an awful lot about it, to be honest. I'd rather most of it was left alone, but it's not my land and it's not for me to say. Any thoughts on possible connections between astronomical alignments and fairy paths? I'll be honest, Paul, very little, because I have done so little research on fairy paths, to be honest. It's not my area of expertise at all. We are going to have an episode on the progression or the evolution or the emergence of fairy folklore out of mythology. So perhaps that's a time when we can sort of, perhaps I can learn a bit from that and maybe discuss further at that stage. Just beautiful, says Scott Gracie. Once you finished, we can all go away and cry. I had to actually just catch my my own. I catch on to myself a little bit there when I was reading. I have a few alignments you might be interested in. I look at maps and alignments too. Sounds fascinating, Scott. Send them on, absolutely. Tarini Pendleton sends shamrocks and green hearts. We want to share your amazement by our amazement, says Jules. Are these alignments the same as ley lines? Yeah, well, they are in the sense, Alwyn, that ley lines, as far as I'm concerned, are straight track alignments of sites across long distances. Whether there is energy related to those or not, mysterious earth energies, etc., I don't go into that because I don't dowse as a rule. It's not something that I've really done. And I find the whole thing of earth energies quite vague. And because I do have the scientific approach as well as the poetic, I would like to see more evidence of the earth energies that people speak of. Certainly in prehistory, there's absolutely no doubt that builders of monuments laid them out in line with each other across long distances. No doubt about it. Paul Nolan says, have you done much on Rathcrohan? Only new here. I haven't actually, and it is down as an episode suggestion, Paul, so we will get to it, definitely. Druids are teachers of wisdom, knowledge, and myth. Yes, not how to make your fortune on Instagram. Orion sets over downtown Montreal from mid-March through April when viewed from Ile Sainte-Hélène, says Robin Edgar. There were no Druids when Newgrange was made. It predates Druids by 2,000 years. Says who, Si? Who are the Druids? And who can say when the Druids originated? I've already discussed the idea that Elkmar is the epitome of a Druid in the description of him in Tuckmark Etain. I disagree with you, but it depends on how firm and how literal and how arbitrary your description or your labeling of Druids is. I mean, you could say the same thing about Celts. There were no Celts when Newgrange was built, but in its wider form, the idea of Celtic mythology refers to the myths of the Celtic nations, and the idea of Celtic monuments describes. It depends. It depends on how strict you are in your definition. But to me, there definitely were Druids, if you call them that, wise men and women, astronomer, poets, astronomer, bards, astronomer, Druids at Newgrange. Thalia Brown says, yes, this is a synchronicity. I dreamt last night about meeting a mythical bird, a white owl that I knew from the ancient past. Well, that's interesting, Thalia. Ulchawan is the Irish for an owl, but it's also known as Cailleach Icha because of its screech and its apparent connection with the banshee, which is a subject we will be getting to soon enough. Where can you get those maps from? Have so many old forts and weird standing stones. Paul, you want to go on to the Historic Environment Viewer I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll paste in the link. The National Monuments Historic Environment Viewer allows you to switch between the old Ordnance Survey maps. Now, the earliest of those is 1830s, I think 1840s. It's 19th century. You won't generally get maps too easily before that. Hang on till I just paste that in here now beneath the live, if the computer ever can. I'm going to paste it in on YouTube as well for the YouTubers. I'm just going to paste it in here as a comment. There you go. Have a look at the Historic Environment Viewer. So you can zoom in and out to your own location, have a look at the Ordnance Survey modern map, have a look at a satellite image, and have a look at the old maps. And all of the red dots mark known or recorded archaeological sites. We are one family, says Aaron to Desiree. Correct. Would love that, a talk on the little people. There will be several, Nora, because we're going to tell some fairy tales too. I just realized something extraordinary, triggered by listening to this episode. I'll have to share my synchronicity story with you all on Facebook and get your thoughts. Movanwe, if you're on the if you're on the Mythical Ireland community, feel free to post it on there. And just a reminder that if you're not on the Mythical Ireland community, you should be, because it's a place where you guys can interact. It's harder to interact on the Mythical Ireland page because I'm the only one who can post on there. You can only respond to posts with comments. But on the Mythical Ireland community, you can post, providing that it's relevant, etc., etc. Sorry, I just need to post that onto another comment under this. A lot of comments tonight and lovely interaction as usual. The Druid of Drogheda, as Patrick is laughing. Once we're done, I'll be taking a nap and see what I dream, says Rowan Grove. Yeah, another thing, I told you we're going to get to dreams and I'm going to talk about dreams. I keep a dream diary. I'm not sure whether that's something you guys do. I'm not always able to recall and write down dreams, but I do on a regular basis. I had a dream last night that I wrote about today. Eddie Lenihan, the Shanachie, knows tons about Irish folklore. He does indeed, and it'd be nice to do a joint broadcast with him, but we'll see. Have I missed an episode on the Banshee, says Deborah. No, you haven't. It hasn't happened yet. It's still in the future. I learned when I was living in Namibia, it amazed me how connected I felt to their myths and histories after traveling there. Yeah, there you go. It's fascinating, isn't it? On how one defines Druids, yeah. Spirit Paths by Paul Devereux is a very good read concerning fairy paths and ley lines. I met Paul at Megalithomania in Glastonbury last year. Lovely man, very nice man. And it was a great pleasure to meet him too. The Druids, as described by the Romans, didn't form in a vacuum. There surely has always been these types of people. Yeah, the Wren. Okay, I'm going to have to go too, folks. I know this is lovely to get all this interaction. Druidry is very ancient. An episode on Queen Maeve would be fantastic, says Nikki Hart. It is also on the list, don't worry. Yeah, actually, we'll do that soon. I was reading about the Cave of the Cats, the story behind that. It's dismissed that there were ever any cats in Ireland back then, but they found 9,000-year-old Eurasian lynx bones in Ireland. That's interesting. I had a dream about a lynx recently. They found the skull of a Barbary ape. I think these are extremely rare royal gifts from the continent. Absolutely right. I can sleep after Mythflix, let alone dream. Are you supposed to say I can't, Jules? You can or you can't. The more you think you know about the greater the unknown. Yes, indeed, Gary is right. And because sort of life has a way of just telling you all the time that you're learning till the day that you die. Every day is a learning experience. And to be honest, when life fails to be that way for you, I think that it has lost a lot of its magic and its power for you, you know. Thanks for tonight again, says Alex. Brill show, Ichawa. Slán agus Bannacht. Right. Good night. Wow, we're over 1 hour 35 minutes, but sure hasn't it flown by? And it's a lovely twilight out there, and I can see Venus out the window, and I might go out and grab the camera and get a picture. In the meantime, remember to keep up your social distancing, keep washing your hands, stay safe, stay well, and keep everyone else safe. And let's progress gradually back towards reopening, you know, our schools and our churches and our shopping malls and whatever things we want to open up again. In the meantime, Kulasov, sound sleep, Slán go fóill, bye for now. Mo Vannacht Orav, my blessings to all of you. And Gra more Orav, great love to you all. And we'll be back tomorrow. I haven't a clue what tomorrow is going to be about. Sure, we might do Maeve. I don't know. We'll see. I'll see. It just depends on how much preparation I have to do. But we'll do another episode. This has been magical, especially after last night's fiasco. Less said about that, the better. In the meantime, good night to all of you, to every one of you, and it's really, really wonderful to have your interaction and your commentary and your support at times when I'm sharing stuff that's very personal, and I feel that support under my feet, as it were. It's not that I'm trampling on you. I feel the support of the community. Anyway, we'll chat again tomorrow. Kulasov, Slán go fóill. Ichawa, YouTubers. I can't even find the end stream button. Hope you're all safe.
Hello and good evening, Fulcha. Welcome to live.
It's replaying already. Wow, it doesn't usually do that.